All right, well, it is now 7:10, and we can get this meeting started. My name is Adrian Cotter. I'm one of the agenda committee. Myra Redman and John Bowers are my co-agenda committee chairs. We'll go around and do introductions in a second. If I could just ask people as we go through the meeting to try to use the raise your hand feature, and we will try to keep an eye out for that and call on you. If for some reason we miss you, please feel free to unmute and just speak up for yourself. I think we're a small enough group that nothing's going to be too disruptive today in particular. All right, so introductions. I've introduced myself. I will give it over to Mandolin. Or I will call on everyone's name. But
thanks, Adrian. Hi, everyone. Mandolin Kader-Edmond with the Oakland Parks and Recreation Foundation. I am here as admin support and your Zoom host. If you need anything technical, please send me a chat. Thanks.
Thank you. Naomi.
Hi, Naomi Schiff, Coalition of Advocates for Lake Merritt and Oakland Heritage Alliance.
Katie.
Yeah, Katie Noonan, co-chair of Rotary Nature Center Friends and member of Lake Merritt Institute.
Dee.
Good evening. Dee Rosario, East Bay Parks, Ward 2, which includes Oakland. Thank you.
John Bowers.
John Bowers, Lake Merritt Institute.
Thank you. Bill.
Bill Thrownfall, Waterfront Action.
James.
James Van, Coalition of Advocates for Lake Merritt.
Myra and John, your husband, I can't remember.
Bob, yeah, okay. Myra Redmond, new member of the agenda committee and still learning.
Bob Redmond, old member and still learning too.
Thank you. John Klein. Needs to unmute, John.
Yeah, John, Coalition of Advocates for Lake Merritt and also a resident at Brooklyn Basin. And thanks for the shout out about the views at Township Commons Park.
Terry.
Terry Fashing. I'm the acting manager for the Watershed and Stormwater Management Division of the City of Oakland and currently the DD Bond Manager acting for Kristen Hathaway.
Thank you. Sandy? She might still be on the phone.
I am here. I just remembered to unmute. Something that Bill's been trying to do for years. Anyway, I'm glad to be here. I'm glad we're still meeting. And I wonder sometimes about how we deal with big products like fires under the freeway at Wood Street and that beautiful train station. But I am the head of Waterfront Action and we keep losing all our battles. It looks like we've lost the A's Stadium also. Finny.
Jenny? Oh, thank you, Sandy. Jenny?
Evening, Coalition Advocates, Jenny Gerard, Lake Merritt, Weed Warriors, co-convener, among other hats. Good to see all of you.
David.
Hi, hello everyone. David Wofford, co-chair of the Rotary Nature Center Friends and Lake Merritt neighbor.
Thank you. Mike.
Mike Perlmutter with the City of Oakland Watershed Division. I work with Terry Fashing. Terry's my supervisor, and I'm supporting the coalition with a lot of kind of administrative tasks along with Adrian and Mandolin, and that's me.
Thank you. Rick.
Rick Rickard, Bike East Bay, and a volunteer with the Park District.
Thank you. Asata, apologies if I pronounced your name wrong.
You call Asada?
Yes.
I'm observing, never been in your meetings, try to see if you are implementing a fair and equitable process related to parks. It looks like it's a lot of Lake Merritt. So I'll continue to listen to see where equity and fairness is going on with Measure DD money. Thank you.
If I may, I'd like to offer a special invitation to Ms. Olabala, and thank you for coming. Thank you very much.
Stephanie.
Stephanie McFadden. I'm at East Bay Rowing Club. I'm the vice president of the board, and Virginia Rowe recommended I come and join you. She's not able to join, and I want to catch up on Measure DD and how it impacts Jack London Aquatic Center and our estuary access. So thanks for having me. I'm gonna finish my dinner now, though.
All right, Mai. My vote.
Oh, hello. My name is Maivo. I'm currently a student of Boise State University. I'm pursuing APA in public health. One of my classes required me to join a community meeting, and I decided to join this meeting to learn more about the community in Oakland. Thank you.
Great. Well, welcome everybody, especially the newcomers. Feel free to ask questions, or if you have follow-up questions after the meeting, you can reach out to us as well. Are there any changes to the agenda for tonight, or any additions? The meeting, hopefully everybody has the agenda handy. I will paste it in the chat in case you do not.
I move to accept the agenda.
All right, and hearing no objections, for a review of the minutes, is there any comments on the minutes? Okay. All right, well,
excuse me, I do have a comment. Sorry, I was trying to raise my hand. But where
sure.
can I see those right now?
The minutes, I will link you to the meeting from last, and paste in the chat the meeting for last month. All our agendas for the last year or so are on City of Oakland website. If you search for the meeting, Measure DD Coalition meetings, they have video recordings and minutes.
Okay, thanks.
All right, so I think we are on to Mike for the DD Program Manager's report.
All right, I'm gonna share my screen and get a slideshow going on, and I'll take you through the project updates. Give me a second here. Screen two. Can folks see this title slide?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay. All right. So there's a number of projects for which there are no updates, and I'm just going to list those. And if you are curious about the latest information, you can go back to the presentation from May, and you can see what we talked about then. So in the Lake Merritt and Channel category, there's 2 projects that are just in the kind of administrative process of being closed out. That's the Lake Merritt Improvement Project and the Snow Park Lakeside Green Street project. And the Tide Gate operations guidance for the 7th Street Flood Control Facility is just on hold until August, when our DD manager, Kristen Hathaway, is back and can address questions from the coalition. Waterfront access, parks and cleanup. The Harbor Master Trail connection is also being closed out, and there's no update for the Waterfront Trail at Fruitvale. And Creek and Waterway restoration category, there's no updates from Cortland Creek. It's still moving forward, still on schedule. No updates for the project at Beaconsfield, which is still very conceptual at this point. No updates for the watershed acquisition. And right before this meeting, I did get an email from Craig Pahn, and he said there's no updates on the path repair that he's talked about at these meetings lately. So now the projects that have updates, we'll move on to those. This is just not really information, but the Lake Merritt Channel at 7th Street pedestrian crosswalk. I went by there because I was curious just to see what was going on, and I took some photos of, and I circled areas that had been damaged in the car accident that happened after this project was completed. So the mechanisms for lighting up the crosswalk and the signal are no longer there, and hopefully they will be repaired. But if anyone was just curious what that looks like, that's what it looks like. Lake Merritt Channel at 10th Street. Oops, that's photo's a little too big, but the consultants are working on kind of getting the revegetation plan back up and running. It had been on hold for a while there were encampment issues happening on the site. Now that the fence is up, the city is looking to resume the restoration and hopefully complete it and finish off this project. That won't happen likely until 2024. And then there's some negotiation happening with the former contractor for the site. In the waterfront access category, there's a lot of projects in here. We're gonna just, Estuary Park has been very popular to talk about at this meeting. There's a lot happening there. The latest is that there's this conceptual plan, this illustrative plan about what the design is starting to look like, the different areas, and how they're being planned. So there's a lot of detail on this. I'm not going to go through it, but there is information on the website, which is on the bottom of the screen. So this plan has been drafted at this point. The city is working on CEQA documents, and construction phase 1 is targeted for fall of 2024. There was a question about the landscaping. Question came from this group about how is the landscaping going to be done, who is going to maintain it, water conservation, drought tolerance, that kind of stuff. So we did ask Christine Reed. She gave us a little bit of information. Plant selection is going to include drought tolerance, durability, and ease of maintenance. They're going to use water-wise irrigation techniques. They're going to have a lawn just for specific recreational areas. The maintenance, once the project is done, will be done by the Public Works Park and Tree Services Division. And the design team is coordinating closely with them to make sure that they're on board with the plans and that those plans make sense in terms of maintenance long-term. Crowley Trail, East Bay Regional Park District actually reached out to me to ask some technical questions They're moving forward a little bit on their planning. And the only real update I have beyond that is that they shifted their expected date out a year now to 2024 for this project. Union Point Park to 23rd Avenue, aka Milling to Cemex, East 7th Street to 23rd/29th Avenues, right over here by the Park Street Bridge. Rebecca Darr is project manager, and they've achieved permissions to enter the 3 properties, and the permissions to enter are going to allow the city to go in and do all the background research that they need to do, the geotechnical borings, the surveys, environmental site assessments. So that's good progress. The waterfront trail connections at Park and High Street bridges, circled here in red on the maps. The city has been meeting with different stakeholders. So the city met with Alameda County Public Works and also the US Coast Guard, just to kind of refresh and get feedback on the plans. They're meeting with the Harbor Safety Commission in late August, and the construction costs are given there between $13 to $16 million for each trail, which would come out to somewhere between $26 to $32 million. And that depends on when construction starts. It depends on the price of steel, the price of concrete. It depends on a lot of logistics. There's a lot of complicated logistics for building these, and a lot of the construction would happen at night. The bridges would be up during that time. So there's just a lot of unknowns. So that's why there's a very large span of costs that are given. For the creek and waterway restoration category, some progress has been made at the Glen Echo Creek Restoration Project. So again, just the project specs, here's a map. It's about 1,000 feet of open creek channel. The goals are to stabilize and repair the steep eroding creek banks, restore the native riparian vegetation, and enhance Oakland Park. In terms of what has happened since the last meeting, the initial data gathering has been completed by the consultant. Plans have been finalized for public engagement and Americans with Disabilities Act and public access reports. And then public stakeholder meetings are anticipated to start in the fall, sometime in September or October. And when we have more information about that, we will let you know. And city is looking for funding to support this project. Getting close to the end of this presentation here, Measure DD Coalition administrative support. So that's all the work that goes into behind the scenes to make these meetings happen, to host information about the coalition. Thank you, Adrian Cotter. He's going to talk later in the meeting about website updates that he's been making. We have a lot of improvements there, so I'm not going to talk too much. I don't want to steal his thunder. We now have the listserv working, so no longer will you get information from me, but the DD Coalition subscribers to the listserv are now part of a listserv, and that listserv is up on the website, and anyone can sign up and to receive updates. And for us on the back end, we actually have some analytics that we can see for any message that we send out. We can see how many people did we successfully deliver it to, how many of them opened up the message, how many of them clicked on links, what links did they click. So we can kind of, if we want, evaluate how effective our communication is, or how active are the subscribers to this list. And thank you again to Mandolin Kadera-Redmond, who works on behalf of the Oakland Park and Recreation Foundation. She's the lead on the contract, and to Adrian Cotter, who wears a few hats with this group, and one of them is volunteering for these website updates. That is my update for the projects, and I'm happy to stop there and take any questions if folks have them.
Mike, I have a question pertaining to the milling site. You mentioned that right of entry agreements have been obtained. And I wanted to ask, we've struggled with this for a long time, much of it under the leadership of Rick Rickard, who has been remarkably persistent on this. How were those agreements attained? And are there any lessons for us about other segments where we're struggling?
I will relay those questions to Rebecca Dar, who's a project manager, and I'll see what she says. I don't know. They had a consultant working on it. I don't have any more details than that.
Sorry, go ahead, Terry.
Oh, I'm trying to find my hand raiser. I'm sorry. I just wanted to say that we hired an expert consulting firm who we were told would be very good at getting access. And I'm not sure exactly what their secret is. I think they're just very experienced in the way they write the letters that they deliver to the property owners. As Mike said, Rebecca can provide more information, but my understanding is that this is it's a renowned consulting firm that is extremely expert at doing this kind of work. And I'll get the name of it and put it in the chat.
Cool. Thank you, Terry. I see James, Naomi, and then John Klein.
Thank you very much, Adrian. Two questions for Mike. One, I understand that the entry gates for the Central Gardens, the park, have been completed. Was there a public unveiling or an opening that was held for that activity, or is something scheduled in the future? That's the first question. Second question, I think I saw on City Council agenda that a $500 grant is being given or is expected for Estuary Park. Will that 500,000, I believe, will it be, has that been anticipated, or will it be an additional amount which will help to make more of the improvements that are desired at Estuary Park be implemented? And thank you. Those are the two questions I have.
I don't know the answers to either of those questions. I'm happy to follow up. Terry, do you have any insight into either of those?
I want to better understand the question. Are you, can you repeat the question? Are you asking if the grant funding that they are receiving and going after will pay for extra project elements, or?
Yes, is this, I think the amount is 500,000, I believe, or I don't, maybe I'm wrong on the exact amount, but I understand that it's a grant that's coming for Estuary Park. And my question is that amount already figured into the budget for Estuary Park, or will that be an additional amount that'll allow more of the improvements that are being designed to be carried out?
Well, the current design, the current schematic design and the current budget that has been developed for the project, with the project manager and the consultants working on the design, trying to do their best to predict the cost of the current scope for the project, that the grant funding would help pay for that project as it is conceived right now. Does that make sense? Like, in other words, there's a certain schematic design that if that is built, will cost a certain amount, and that grant funding is going to help pay for the cost.
All right, so with that grant funding, the schematic that has been developed to date could be carried out?
No, the cost of the project is currently, the current estimate is that they'll need around 15.7 million is the number I've been told. And so there needs, more grant funding is needed, and the project manager is going to be applying for more grant funding and is communicating with me and then Kristen about what other Measure DD funding could be used for the project. And so I'm, asking more questions of the project manager at this time about that.
All right.
But really, I'm communicating what I've learned from Kristen, and when she's back in August, she'll be able to provide more information, about Series D, Measure D funding, things like that, and how that funding will be allocated.
All right, my understanding is that the original budget, allocates 18 million for the Estuary Park. Okay, all right, we'll
Okay.
wait for Kristen to get details. Thank you.
Yeah, right now they've kind of, it's a kind of a lean project. They're doing as much as they can for, they're predicting 15.7 million right now. So.
Thank you.
Okay.
Naomi?
Yes, I have similar kinds of questions. While you mentioned, Mike, the cost of these trail improvements under the bridges, I'm looking at the project update table and I don't understand. There is a category called Estuary Waterfront Access, Parks and Cleanup category that has apparently a fair amount of money in it, but I mean, $53 million was in the bond. I don't know how much of it is relevant, and the active projects have got very tiny allocations by and large. So I was just wondering, when you're talking about $16 million or whatever, do we have that money or do we don't have that money? And what is the relationship of the DD funds available to what the plans say it's going to cost?
So can I just say that my understanding is that the current funding that we have is based on the Series B and Series C Measure DD funds. And until we go out for the Series D funding, that is when, we sell more bonds that we will have more money. This is what I've been told by Kristen. So, and the details on that should wait until she's back. And also I can take these questions and then get back to you all in writing once I speak with her. But so I'm not sure I'm answering the question fully because I'm not looking 100% at the project table that you're talking about right at this moment. But I can compare, I can look at that project table and look at the information I have from our accounting system and compare and just make sure that we are correctly describing the information in the project update table as far as the money goes.
Thanks. Yeah, I have no idea whether we're like way short or we're fine or somebody's looking for $100 million from somebody else or what. So it would be great to just have a sense of how likely these projects are to occur. Thank you.
As soon as Kristen comes back, I will be understanding this whole thing better. Unfortunately, she'll just come back right as I'm gaining my understanding.
Okay.
But I am in the process of learning it. So I will get back to you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, John and William and Jenny. To Bill and Jenny.
Yeah, hi. I just have a quick question about the channel, and it's the pathway on the Laney College side, the channel going from Lake Merritt to 7th Street. I ride my bike through there often. Generally, the surface is pretty good, except between 10th and 7th. It's real rough asphalt. And is that area there from 7th to 10, is that actually Laney College? I mean, again, the condition of the roadway is really bad compared to the entire length, other parts of the length. And so is that a DD, would that be a DD funded improvement if you wanted to fix the surface there, or is that Laney College?
It is
That's my
ours
question.
to fix. I will speak, and then Mike and Terry, you can correct me, but we actually have a CIP project lined up. Unfortunately, it didn't get in this current phase, and we hope that it will get into the next one and be prioritized. But the pathways along the channel are both in that project. And there's parts of the project that are degrading into the water even. So I think there is some serious work there.
Okay, thank you.
Bill? I need to unmute.
Just to emphasize what I'm hearing is kind of an overall seeking of additional information on the part of the coalition. I think it's fair to say that we want to know more. And in order, not just to satisfy curiosity, but in order to do our job as we understand it. So please pass along the notion that we would like more detail about funding and plans related to that funding. Thanks.
Jenny?
Following up on what Bill said, a suggestion I have is that in the minutes, you might actually put just tiny little updates on these topics, so that or in some fashion send this out at the time of the minutes, so that we have a pretty quick response to some of these questions. I appreciate very much that you're taking a list of them, but while they're fresh in everybody's minds, it would be useful to hear your responses sooner rather than, for instance, in September. So that's my suggestion.
Sounds good.
Sasa?
I'm looking to see if there is an identification of geographical equity related to Measure DD. I live in District 6, and just for a start-off question, are there any projects currently that can be updated that are related to District 6? And have you determined as a group looking at the geographical equity as an issue as you do your work? I also see when you discuss the crosswalk of at Lake Merritt, it appears from a document I just pulled up that you deal with transportation plans with Measure DD money. And it's the same as, besides parks, are there any areas in my district where transportation issues like sidewalks or whatever have been a part of the use of the monies? So I'm hearing a whole lot of concentration, it looks like in specific areas, but I don't see a holistic use of the money so far. So can the question be answered just simply, are there any projects in District 6 that are currently being used for Measure DD fund, by Measure DD fund? Thank you.
Does someone from the coalition want to answer that, or should I?
Well, one place to look is at the list of DD projects. Overall, there are many projects which are already complete, including the East Oakland Sports Center. And so there have been projects in many different districts in town, of which I think the most disenfranchised is perhaps District 1. But what we're doing now is sort of the last pile of projects. And it is entirely reasonable to look at those by district and should be fairly simple to figure out where they are.
Right.
I didn't get an answer to my question. I asked a simple question and I got a lot of, I know about the sports center, that's many, many years past. And it's in bad shape. But anyway, if that's your answer, thank you very much.
If there's any current projects, it would be one of the creeks, I would think.
Right. One complication is that we are at the end of the Measure DD funds. And we also, the bond measure that was approved by the voters, it includes certain categories of projects that do have, are defined geographically in some cases, where the funding allocated is can only be spent on projects in those areas or those funding categories. So for instance, there is a creek restoration funding category that can only be spent on creek restoration. But then there are also, there's the Lake Merritt funding category and the Lake Merritt Channel funding category. And that funding can only be spent on projects in those areas. And that was something that was included in the bond that was voted on by, voted on when that measure was approved by Oakland's voters. So there are some constraints to where projects can be built with these remaining funds that we have from Measure DD. But I think we are looking into putting a map together that we don't, was that map of all the Measure DD projects, Mike, that you just set up?
That's the map from the Waterfront Action page, and
Okay.
something that Adrian and I have been talking about is how to
Yeah.
update the map and get it onto the city webpage. So we will have better geographic information, and it will be very easy to see where projects are. We can overlay it with council districts and equity assessments, and
Yeah, exactly.
and we're doing our best to space those projects out within the confines of the funding categories that we're working with.
Right. And so as, part of my, looking at what funding we do have left, as I, provide more clear information on that, make sure that what we're putting into the project updates matches what I'm seeing in my Oracle reports. I will look and see what other funding is available to be distributed or to be spent on projects in areas that score high on Oakland's equity map. Like I don't have enough information on that. And Asada, I'll just let you know that I am on a real learning curve with working on this Measure DD program. And so I am sorry that I don't have a better answer, because I don't have enough in my memory of all of the projects that have been built, and I don't have enough information on the remaining funding and what it will go to. So I apologize that I don't have a better answer, but I can obtain a better answer for you.
I just found completed projects on a website. I
Yes.
see it. Thank you.
Okay, great.
Jenny?
Asada, in answer to your question about if there's DD money for sidewalks, not explicitly, there is some DD funding has been used on pathways as part of improvements around the lake and the channel, and certainly the Bay Trail. But those are not typically sidewalks, and they are not explicitly noted as sidewalk improvements. So DD is not going to be a funding source there.
Great. Well, unless there's any final questions, I think we can move on to the 12th Street Bridge site restoration fire post damage restoration. You're on mute, Mike, if you're talking.
All right, thank you, Adrian. I put together some information, kind of a chronology, and I expect the coalition participants to have a lot to say on this. So I'm just gonna kind of cue it up for you. For those who don't know, there was a fire at an encampment on April 28th of this year. The encampment was under the 12th Street Bridge by Lake Merritt, and this was part of a Measure DD project that was there. There was public art and pathway improvement, and that fire, unfortunately, destroyed a lot of that. A few days after the fire, staff, Jen Stern, who works with me in the watershed division, met on site with the Oakland Beautification Council, who is hired to, or is on contract to help with cleanups, and they helped with the cleanup after the fire there. And Jen advised them about just how to keep pollutants out of the bay using wattles and diverting water to vegetated areas. I went by there in May, and this is what it looked like. So I didn't see any encampments on this side of the bridge. The site was clear. You can see there's charring along the walls, along the ceiling. There were public art structures, kind of illuminated pathways that are, that stuff is not there right now. Here are the wattles here, kind of keeping debris out of the bay, anything that might float on the surface of the ground. Thanks to Myra Redmond, she took these photos on Saturday to show that the encampments are starting to be present again at the site on both sides of the bridge. So this is the side that had the fire. This is the opposite side. I did hear from Kristen Zaremba, who works on the public art program for the city of Oakland. She was here last meeting. She has reached out to the Department of Transportation to coordinate repair plans, and she's checking in with the artist team. But that artist, John Rogers, is currently out of town, so she's waiting for more information there. And I think that's all I've got for this. Actually, there's two other, a little bit other, it's not specific to this, but it's come up, I know, from the coalition about reporting homeless encampments, and I'm just going to go over a little bit of information. This is like high level how to do it. A lot of you are very versed in this, but just to cover our bases, there's two methods. So there's Oak 311, and there's this email, homelessness@oaklandca.gov. Oak 311 is your kind of catch-all for reporting routine maintenance and urgent infrastructure issues. You can contact them a number of ways. You can call them, you can use an app on a smartphone, you can report it through the web. All the reports receive trackable service requests that are dated, and you can use those service request numbers to help you get updates on what's going on. Has it been responded to? Is it being evaluated? Has it been worked on? Is it complete? So that's helpful, and it's a stamp in time of the report, and you can track that. In terms of reporting homelessness encampments, our homeless encampments, there's this email. The email is set up to go to what's called the Encampment Management Team, which is an interdisciplinary team of city staff who coordinate regularly about how our homeless encampments going to be managed. Are they going to be closed, cleaned? Are they going to remain? Anyways, if you're reporting to them, they want to have some basic information, and I've listed it here. They want the date. They want the requester's affiliation and name. They want the exact address and description. They would love to get a Google Maps link, council district. They're interested to know if there are vehicles that are part of the encampment, such as RVs or trucks. Are there any other information that you want to report along with it, describing the encampment and any concerns that there might be around the encampment? And they're also interested to know, has the reporter already been in contact with other departments in the city, and just to help with the internal coordination. And pictures are very valuable for these reportings. The other aspect of reporting is that if there's illegal dumping at the encampment, that should get reported to 311. If there's fires happening, that should be reported immediately to the fire department. And if there's violence, threats of violence, or illegal behaviors, those should be reported to 911. And then there is a website that gives information about the encampment management team and schedules for encampment management across the city. So you can just easily search it on the city website. Just search up homeless encampments and you'll get to this page. That's my update, and I'm going to turn it over to the coalition.
I see James.
Yes, Mike, I think that some of the concerns of the coalition were, since this fire was broadly reported, it was acted on. There was cleanup. The encampment dwellers were moved out, and there is still repair work to be done. And I thank you for mentioning that, and we'll be getting a report on that. However, it's very dismaying to the coalition that some of the tents and campers are coming back to this area, which we want. It has to be cleaned. This is a public access. And I noticed that the park next to the Veterans Building on Grand and Harrison, when that encampment was cleared, the area was cleared, the Public Works installed fences around the park so that it's now free, and there's been no re-entry into that little park area. So I think from a coalition standpoint, why were campers allowed to re-inhabit this area under the bridge? Once they got cleared out, for a while, there were no tents that had moved back there. And it seemed to me that some follow-up with the encampment management team would ensure that there is a periodic surveillance or just marching through that area by OPD to make sure that nobody re-inhabits that area. So it's seeing those photos of tents being reinstalled there is very disappointing. And I don't think going through that form for the encampment management team is the way that we need to respond to this. This is a problem that's defined itself, spelled itself, had to be dealt with, and that just following up on that should have been normal course of action. Thank you.
James, thanks for your comments. The nature of the Grand and Harrison site is very different from the 12th Street Bridge, which is a pathway, and the whole point of the pathway is to have access, and so people can go through it. So Grant and Harrison, they fenced it off, and a fence would probably prevent encampments under the 12th Street Bridge, but it would be counter to the purpose of having a path there. So, I don't know, the bigger picture about what's going on there with encampment management. I don't know if Terry has any information, and I know that the coalition is preparing a letter to send to city officials about it. So, there are, I gave you the very fundamental ways to report encampments, and those I would encourage. If you're seeing things in the community, to use those, and you can also leverage other approaches to try and get responses.
Sarah?
Just a little bit of information about what went on with that fire. The person who was involved with the fire was a resident of the tiny homes. They had a living space that they had access to. And this was something that was going on. A lot of the residents of the Lake Merritt tiny homes also continued to have spaces outside of the tiny homes. And many of the fires, including this fire, had to do with the use of propane tanks. And a lot of that use has to do with illegal activity, MET. So it's just a common thing going on with our homeless encampments, where we have all of these fires. A lot of it is the same reason that we had a fire at the tiny homes. That could have been very serious. It was caught, propane tanks again. But the resident who lived in the tiny homes, no accountability for the person who did this. What the city does is they don't want any mess. So they don't take actions to make sure this doesn't happen again. That's why we got that Wood Street thing going on, where over and over again it has happened. Now they're taking actions to close it down. So at the same time, just to get people to report on it, we need to make sure that as responsible individuals, we become a part of making sure it doesn't happen anymore. And just reporting it to 311 is not going to be helping as much as we can to help the homeless director, the city administrator, the city council, to say, we need something to make sure these encampments don't continue to become a threat to public safety. Thank you.
Thank you. Terry?
I really hear what folks are saying about reporting these very, serious problems that are associated with homeless encampments. I very much encourage reporting those in various ways. And as residents, you have different avenues that you can follow that city staff cannot. Like, I generally can't communicate directly with the mayor, but you can. And but I do believe it's very important to report the concerns to homelessness, to the homeless administrator through that email address that Mike provided. And it's very important to provide all of the information that they request, because that information is useful to the city to be able to keep track of all of the problems and to prioritize as best we can to address the problems, and to track them, and to put the encampments on a map, and to put list the illegal activity that's going on. And I do believe that the city is using it to take action to close encampments, to do deep cleaning, I have watched the encampment management team in action, and it's many city staff working very hard to do the best they can. And we do need our city officials to continue to work on this problem, but reporting it is part of the solution, in my opinion.
I do notice, I noticed that there was a closure of an encampment that had been on the channel that had been sort of huge, massive at the 12th Street Bridge. And I see it here on the encampment management team page as one of their recent closures, and that was a high sensitivity area.
Yeah.
But I don't see, what I don't see though is like, you know, the encampments underneath the east side of the bridge have been there for a long time as well. And like, is there a list somewhere of the things that are already on, like the future list schedule is not very deep. So it's kind of hard to tell like what's known about versus what we should continue to push on.
Right. I don't have access to that list either, but I do know that the information is compiled, and the number of complaints does matter, and also the severity of the issues at the sites. And we, the watershed program does advocate quite a lot internally to encourage encampment closures in high sensitivity areas where there are encampments that are impacting waterways. And so please do CC us if you report, and we do take action internally to you know, encourage the encampment management team to work collaboratively to try to prevent re-encampment. It is really hard. I mean, I know a lot more needs to be done, but I do see a tremendous amount of work being done to try to address an overwhelming problem.
Yep.
Yeah.
John.
I just want to reinforce James's comments and simply make the point that we have seen, or I have seen, examples of where the city has successfully dismantled homeless encampments. The two examples that come most immediately to mind are Mosswood Park and Union Point Park. And those are examples of where, through whatever means the city employs, the city has been successful in not having those encampments reestablished. And why, what I don't understand is this situation under a major transportation thoroughfare and at one of the most heavily used, or what should be one of the most heavily used recreational sites in the city, hasn't been given the same level of priority as we have seen employed at these other locations like Union Point Park and Mosswood Park. That's what's troubling to me. And it's the relative scene of seeing the city successfully dismantle homeless encampments and locations, but here at the Lake Merritt Channel, after a highly destructive fire that could have been even more destructive, thank God that it wasn't, we see the reestablishment of an encampment right at the location where this fire occurred. And that's what I don't understand. And we see differential outcomes out there. I don't minimize the severity and the extent of the homelessness problem. I think the city has an incredible challenge facing it, dealing with these things. The same token, where we see these differential outcomes, it raises questions in our minds about what the city's priorities are.
Yeah. I will say that BCDC was enforcing against the city, and that was part of why the Union Point Park encampment was prioritized. So pressure from that outside agency was part of the equation, in my opinion. And there were other factors as well, including the severity of the issues that were occurring at that encampment. And it was really appalling what was happening at that encampment. So I still will say that I highly recommend reporting concerns and being persistent, and please CC the watershed program when you're reporting about encampments that are impacting waterways or storm drainage. We will take action on those, and we are trying to, we are in the process of figuring out what the watershed division's role is and should be, and how active we are in working on this problem. But yeah, it has been this growing workload for us in our division, and we're in the process of self-discovery and kind of figuring out how we want to do this. And we also want to make sure that our approach is equitable, and so we're starting to look at that as well. So it's a very tough problem. I don't know. Thank you for your thoughts, everybody.
Mike, do you want to talk about the Beautification Council?
Sure. All right, so from problems to some problem solving, the Oakland Beautification Council is a 501c3 local nonprofit based in Oakland. There were some questions about what is this organization, questions that came from the coalition, and how are they working, and how are they working on different cleanups along waterways and parks. So they target illegal dumping, graffiti, and blight issues across the city. They provide job and life skills training to justice system involved and unhoused individuals. They often recruit folks directly from encampments, for instance, to help with encampment cleanups. In 2020, they were awarded their first contract with the city of Oakland to help with homeless encampment cleanup efforts. And those efforts are categorized by this name they've come up with: Homeless Encampment Micro Cleaning and Sanitation, or HEMS is the acronym they've given it. And by micro cleaning, you could think of them as the detail team that will come in after the city workers have collected the large debris. But there's a lot of stuff that's left over after those cleanup, and sites may not actually look very clean because of all that leftover stuff. So they come and do that detail work. Here's a picture of them working at 5th and Kirkham Streets in West Oakland. You can see they're bagging up debris. They're bagging up stuff that was left behind. They've got brooms and litter picks, and they're going over all the little stuff. You know what it is, all the litter that's out there, food containers, wrappers, masks, etc. They also do some sanitization and disinfection with hydrogen peroxide to help clean up sites, and they note that that is a EPA-approved COVID-19 disinfectant. They have a current contract with the city, so it's for 2 years for $1.6 million to do this micro cleaning. Here they are at another site in West Oakland, 16th and Mandela. You might see their work around town. They usually put a kind of identifier on their bags. It's often a piece of paper that has their name and information, and they tape it onto the bag. So after their work is done, people can see who did it. They also are available for the city for ad hoc and very sensitive assignments, time sensitive. And again, they do employ workers from encampments. And so they're trying to both clean up encampments and also empower and employ residents of encampments, kind of a two-pronged approach. And I just thought I'd show a couple other photos just to show you some of their work. I'm just showing photos from some West Oakland projects, but they work all over the city. They work in East Oakland. They're dispatched, but these are just some of the photos I thought that kind of illustrated what they're doing the best. And that's it for information that I have on the Beautification Council.
Thank you, Mike. Any questions about that?
I see a question in the chat from Myra about who decides where they go. So their contract is managed by what's called the Keep Oakland Clean and Beautiful division. That's the division that cleans up illegal dumping and homeless encampments and various forms of blight. And so the Beautification Council is ultimately dispatched by Keep Oakland Clean and Beautiful to different locations. And it's work through, for instance, the encampment management team, which might decide where encampment closures are going to happen, where cleanup's going to happen, and where that micro cleaning is going to be needed, or if there's other types of problems that they're going to be dispatched to.
Asada?
I had the opportunity to observe the Beautification Council over at Lake Merritt Tiny Homes every day for 5 months. And this is my concern. When they would collect and put the bags down in the area where they collected, those bags would stay there for a long time, and it was encouraging other people to dump. So over a period of time, people would see the bags and they would do illegal dumping. And so we got a couch, we got a mattress before they picked up. The other thing is the individuals who are working. I'm always observing where are the African Americans in terms of workforce. I didn't see any African Americans working at that site. Several times they would come there. They did a good job of picking up, very good job of picking up. But it did encourage, because it took so long, more illegal dumping at the site where they left their bags. And the other thing is, talking to some of the individuals who are working, they don't live in Oakland. And none of them that were working were homeless people. You just said they were homeless. They weren't homeless community members. So thank you for the time.
Yeah, those are real concerns. I can speak just from my former experience with the volunteer management volunteer program. Whenever we had cleanups, it was really important that we had the pickup of the bags coordinated as soon as possible, for the exact reason you're saying, Asada, because any debris that's left out there attracts other debris for people to dump it. So we can pass that feedback on to the Keep Oakland Clean and Beautiful division and say, just, we heard this feedback and just want to make sure that they're coordinating to pick up those bags as soon as possible after the cleanup. In terms of the demographics, we can also send those questions back. I had asked for an informational report, and that's what I got. And I heard about them hiring encampment residents, and I don't know what the percentage is. I don't know if they have any demographic information about their practices that could be shared.
Great. Well, next up was me. I was gonna talk a little bit about the websites, which we've already talked about a little bit through the course of this meeting and over the course of the last couple of meetings. Let's see, I will share my screen. So I will say that I heard a lot of negative things about the Oakland City website before I started working on this, but I actually really appreciate a lot of the features of the tool that they're using, and I think partially it's just my professional opinion, because what I do for a living is that it's a little bit about training and sort of having people do things in a way that makes sense. And the hardest thing of any website is maintaining the content and keeping it up to date. And I think that's more of the problem with the Oakland City website is not so much that the tool is bad, but that people have to have time, they have to have some skill and knowledge to be able to maintain these things. And even for people who do it for a living, it can still be a painful thing to do. So one of the nice things about this system is their meetings thing, which we've been using a little while now. We've been able to have all the agenda and minutes and videos in one place and have that readily available to people before and after the meetings. And so it's a nice building this database of all our meetings that's going to be there over time. That's nicely collected together. Let's see. So hopefully I can actually find. I know search is another thing that people often complain about, and it's I will just say that also search is a really challenging thing. We're sort of super used to sort of using Google to find everything, and we sort of expect our websites to act the same. But it's actually a technically challenging thing because Google uses billions of bits of data out there to organize things that any individual website doesn't necessarily have. And this would be one of the places where I think the tool that they use could do a bit better job than it does, but still it's not totally terrible. So we don't have everything that Bill had on waterfront action at the moment. And I'll talk a little bit more about where we're going for the future. We are starting to make use of this new news feature where we will be putting in the project updates that Mike does every month, and potentially other stuff as well as we have successes or things that go wrong, or whatever happens to be. If you have any suggestions for news items, feel free to send me an email, and I would be happy to put something up. So there's kind of two areas that concern us. There's the Measure DD website itself, which is the overview from the city's perspective, and then there is the community coalition portion of the website as well, which has more information about the meetings and staying in touch and our links to our previous meetings and upcoming meetings. Asada, did you have a question?
Yes, just a suggestion. When you print out your agenda, could you put the number, the ID number on the agenda page? Because most meetings of the city and boards and commission, the ID number comes up when you pull up the agenda. For here, I had to do a lot of looking. And I know you can, there's a place where you can go to the Zoom and press Zoom. But for some people like myself, I go through the meetings and write down the numbers and then go back to it and use the number, but not necessarily go to that Zoom site. So it
Gotcha.
took,
So you're
yeah, it was challenging to find the ID number because
okay.
it's
So
usually,
the ID number of the Zoom meeting is what you're suggesting.
right, on
Okay.
the agenda page. And that's a common practice for all boards and commissions as well as city council meetings. On the agenda page is the webinar number as well.
Okay.
Thank
We
you.
will take that and try to do that on an ongoing basis. James.
Yes, I was a little surprised to see under the topics, the Beautification Council listed. And I don't recall that the Beautification Council is an activity that the Measure DD Community Coalition has endorsed or approved. And since their work is related to homeless encampments all over the city, many of which have no relationship to a Measure DD project. And since they have a contract with the city where they're getting paid, I just wonder why they are being listed on the coalition's website.
Where do you see that? Because if that's the case, that's a mistake.
I think it is within the agenda when you go to the July agenda. I did see that, James. I can see what you mean, but I think it does.
It was listed as a part of the.
Yeah, on one page it had topics.
Yeah, so this is the topics of the meeting.
Okay, go down. There it is, number 3.
Right. This was the topic that Mike just discussed.
Oh, that
This
was
is-
just for this agenda.
Yeah. These
Oh,
are
okay.
the agenda items.
All right,
topics,
I thought that
topics
was
for the
part of
meeting.
the website, a fixture on the website. Okay, I'm sorry.
No. That's
Take
okay.
it back.
Good question. Thank you.
David.
Oh, thank you. Thanks, Adrian. I saw on the website a link to volunteer, and I clicked on it, and there were a number of good organizations on there that a person could then follow up with and make contact with about volunteer opportunities related to Lake Merritt. I didn't see or find the Rotary Nature Center Friends listed in our third Saturday cleanup and weeding.
If anyone has, I can add that to there. I mostly have copied information from Bill's website and didn't necessarily update a lot of the content per se. So I didn't add Joe, but we can.
Okay, thanks. Separate from this topic, I had a question in the chat. I can save it till we go to new business if necessary.
Okay, sure. I saw it. I meant to bring it up and I forgot. Apologies. So the big thing that is missing from this website is sort of came up earlier in the meeting is the map, and associated with that is sort of like some of the individual project information. And there's been a little bit of there's limits to what the city's site can do that on the maps front. So I've been trying to figure out what could happen with that. And there's a bunch of different options. Mike is currently talking to the Oakland GIS people, so we may eventually, start using ArcGIS to put that together. And I think I've been struggling a little bit with the project lists because the city has some information about some of the projects, but not necessarily all the information that we had, and sort of like different scales of information have been difficult to sort of sort into something that's easily manageable. So I think the map is going to help sort of focus that a bit more, and hopefully we can move towards completion of that this year. James, then Bill.
Yes, one other question. I know the website isn't finished, but I just wanted to ask a question about a very important feature that was on the Waterfront Action website that had been worked on by Mr. Throfall, and that was an interactive map of the city showing identification of all the DD projects, and you could click on any project and you'd get a raft of information. Has that been included, or will it be included in the transfer of the website?
Yeah, that's what I was just trying to speak to. So apologies if that was not actually clear. So yes, we are working on rebuilding that map, and it's unfortunately not as easy because of the way the website works, basically. So Bill?
I just wanted to, on behalf of the coalition, thank you, Adrian, for all your generous volunteer work on this project. It's really going above and beyond. Thank you.
You're welcome. I appreciate that. All right, well, yeah, so if you, I would just say that if you ever have suggestions about content or things that are additionally missing from that, please do reach out to me or reach out to Mike and ask as well, or anyone on the agenda committee really, and they can get to me. But yeah, I'm hoping that we can sort of return it to its full robustness from where it was in the Waterfront Action era as well. All right, so we'll stop sharing my screen now. So we are at announcements, and then we can, David, if you want to speak to your question after that, great. We have plenty of time, so. Katie or David, did you want to speak to upcoming online events?
Yes. So on August 5th, Rotary Nature Center Friends will be hosting Corina Gould in a conversation with Corina. She's the tribal leader of the Ohlone people, Confederated Villages of Oshan. And that will be at 7 p.m. by Zoom, and that's free. I will put the link in the chat.
Thank you. Jenny, do you want to speak to Weed Warriors?
Absolutely. For those of you who walk around the lake regularly, you may well have noticed that at the pergola, Public Works has been doing a good bit of work on replacing some of the rotten supports of the wisteria that have supported the wisteria vines, and have repainted all in one beautiful color the columns. That work is almost completed, and in anticipation of what will be something of a reopening of this cherished site, the Weed Warriors on the last Saturday of July, the 30th, that morning will be weeding and also deadheading the roses and getting it ready for its reintroduction in its newly refurbished condition. So come join us.
Great, thank you. David, did you want to ask your question? And then Naomi, I don't know if you wanted to speak to your two items as well.
Oh, yes, Adrian, thanks. But before I do that, Katie Noonan, I don't think we'll see the Measure DD Coalition members again prior to August 28th. Could you speak to that?
Sure. Let's see, am I here? Yeah. So on August 28th in the afternoon, we will be hosting an event at the Lake Merritt Sailboat House upstairs around the focus of sea level rise. It's called a site exploration. There will be interactive activities and exhibits inside the upstairs of the boathouse. We're working with the San Francisco Exploratorium and other local groups. So look for that, for notices about that. I don't have anything prepared at this moment, but yes.
Thank you, Katie. I'm sure you'll get something out via email.
Definitely.
Prior to the event as well. So Adrian, I just have a couple of quick questions and maybe a comment. And the question I put in the chat had to do with wanting to have information about population density expectation, increase population density expectations. I'm not as sure it would be helpful for, at this point, for Measure DD Coalition as it would be for wildlife stewardship and habitat stewardship there at Lake Merritt, which is something I'm also working on. So I would imagine it might exist, and I don't know if staff could easily make it available or if Measure DD Coalition already has data showing the projected population increase, say, for 10 years and 20 years from now. So that was one question. The other question could I be provided, probably maybe Jenny or Mandolin or whomever, information about the new bathroom by the Lakeview Library next to the Children's Tot Lot. I'd like to know the name of that style of bathroom, how much it costs, as much detail as possible about that standalone toilet that was put in right there. And you know, everyone know what I'm referring to, or the right people? Good.
I know what you're talking about, and bathrooms are a fun subject for me, but I don't have more information.
Hello, for it. Maybe we can find out who it was. I'm supporting, as you know, I live here near Lake Merritt, and I'm supporting Ebalsi's effort to create some affordable housing there where the tiny homes are next to the Duty Academy. And the property comes over to Lake Merritt. It butts up to Lake Merritt. And I wonder if the construction of the project that I do support would impact any Measure DD projects, and how do you make sure it doesn't negatively impact them. And also from the, there's the bridge, and then there's a path. I guess that's the eastern side of the channel. Between the path and the property to be developed, there's habitat. And so my primary concern, you know, is related to that habitat. It's so small and, you know, seldom looked at. I wouldn't want any negative impact to happen there. I would wonder how the city, as we get closer to the project, you know, operates in a situation like that to make sure that there's no negative impact on that wildlife refuge that's right there. And then just a quick comment about the bridge on the western side where the fire was. The other day, riding through there, fellow members, I noticed that the above the ground, but underneath the bridge, the opening had been reopened, and that there were people up in there again. And you know, that's always troublesome when I see that. And you guys were speaking earlier about maybe mitigations and keeping the area free and clear. I just wanted to share with those who may not know that the people are, and I can't imagine what it would be like to be in there already if a fire were to start. I don't see how you would have been able to get out. But and then referrals from Boston, population density, homeless under the bridge, bathroom. Well, lastly, I've run into the Oakland Beautification Council as I move around town while they were at work, and I didn't know who they were, so they were messing around the lake. I stopped to find out, and well, I've just had pleasant, positive interactions with them on the street. Not a great deal more detail than that, though. Thank you.
Thank you, David. Mike shared a couple population things about Oakland in the chat, in case you missed that while you're talking. And I don't know, Mike, if you can find out about that bathroom and by the Lakeview Library, I don't know. Naomi?
I have 2 requests for agenda items for the upcoming, I guess, September meeting. One is that after 7 years or so, the downtown Oakland specific plan is slowly getting back in gear. And I am concerned because, I don't know if you know this, but surrounding the lake is in what is called a historic area of primary importance, which incorporates many historic buildings. And there are questions about the zoning that is being suggested by the planning staff, which I have discussed briefly with James Van and John Klein, but I would like to put it on the agenda. By then I will have more information from the planning department. And I think this group might be pretty interested because one of the issues is that this highly preliminary map may assign rather potentially taller heights near the lake in some locations. And I take a dim view of that, which is how we got Measure DD. That is to say that several of us started this whole idea of improvements when there was talk of tall buildings around the lake. So I would like to put that on the agenda if the agenda committee feels that there is time to discuss it, and I by then will be able to provide more information. And the second item that I would also like to put on the agenda and have discussed with a potential participant is that Deputy Planning and Building Department Director Ed Manassi startled me today in a meeting that was about something else entirely by saying, "Hey, I want to talk to you about the channel." I said, "What about it?" He said, "You know that railroad bridge down there? Well, you may remember that several of us took a tour of the channel and we looked at that railroad bridge and we said, why can't we cross the channel on that? And do we really need this incredibly expensive, never will be built bridge that the consultant has spent so much time designing that it now will cost more money than we will ever have?" And so he had independently discovered the railway right-of-way over there. It happens to also be within the downtown Oakland specific plan area. And so I think there's a possibility that we could invite him to our meeting and have a little chat about the channel and maybe get the DD Coalition and the planning staff, remarkably, to move in the same direction at the same time. And that seemed like a very appealing and much cheaper prospect than the over-designed thing that will not get built. So I wanted to propose that both of those items would be useful additions to a September agenda, if everybody is willing.
Sounds good, Naomi. Thank you. James, did you have?
Maybe I'm not at the right time, but I wanted to propose a work item.
Okay. Go for it.
Okay. I'd like to propose that the agenda committee Mike gave us the information that the encampment management team would like to have on the reports on encampments. So I would ask if we can ask the agenda committee to file such a report with the encampment management team about the re-encampments under the 10th Street Bridge. We don't want
Okay.
that to happen. And so I think we need to, Terry was saying that it's important that we follow their procedures and make that report. So I'd like to suggest that, well, to request that the agenda committee would take that up and follow through with filing of such a report.
Okay. I'll discuss with John and Myra, but I think that should be possible. Jenny?
While we're on the subject of DD work items for the agenda committee, Adrian and John and Myra, will you just update us on where you are in getting in touch with an assortment of people in the city about the status of our, what we refer to as our wish lists and the capital improvements program. We had a thorough report from Mike at the last meeting on sort of generally how CIP programs work. And I think we all agreed that we didn't think we fit in that and wanted to be very explicit in our explanation for those who might not be familiar with the unusual nature of DD funded capital improvements. So could you, if we have, since we have just a few minutes, could you just update us on where you are on preparing that letter?
James has provided drafts and just the other day, and there has been a bit of a back and forth on that draft. To be honest, I don't have it in my head like how to go forward with it. I think it might take a little bit more discussion between the various folks there. I don't know if any involved want to want to comment or.
Well, I'll just mention that
Mike?
the letter in question is in its final stages. We are working on this letter, and we're including in the letter input from James and input from Bill Threlfall, which is very much appreciated. And the letter will, in fact, I assume, will be sent in the very short future.
I can offer that Adrian has been reaching out to me about CIP questions, and I advised him that I've run out of answers, and that the folks that are empowered to give those answers are returning in August, namely Kristen, the DD bond manager. So I've done the best that I can to provide information on how it all works, and until she's back, I don't think, it's going to be hard to get substantive answers on particular questions. But I think, I encourage you to send the letter, and we will do our best to respond.
Asada?
One point that I'm concerned about, under the 12th Street Bridge, there was a cleanup, but it wasn't completed. There is a very large volume of bicycle parts and other debris still located close to where you would have the Dewey High School. And I'm thinking maybe that large volume of dump debris wasn't removed because there's not a way to remove it, so much of it. Could there be some explanation of when the cleanup took place, that was left in place? The second thing I'm concerned about is I went through the projects listed as far as parks, and it's Snow Park, Fairyland, Union Park, Lakeside Park, and the East Oakland Aquatic Center. That's a very small volume of parks. And the equity that I spoke to originally, it doesn't seem to be in place. But there seems to be a disproportionately high number of projects that are centered around Lake Merritt. And even the membership of the group are Lake Merritt connected. So do you see this as being problematic? Are you comfortable with Measure DD funds are targeted to mostly the Lake Merritt area? And but that debris over there, I personally went down there and saw that. It is horrible. And so can there be an answer to why that amount of debris has not been removed? Thank you.
Oh, may I state for the record that I'm comfortable, Ms. Asada, with the use of Measure DD coalition funds in the way that they have been skewed towards Lake Merritt, because my understanding is that particular pot of money was generated to some extent for that point and purpose. And so to the extent that that's how the money was raised, and that I understand it to be that, I am comfortable with the amount and how it's skewed there. And I would hope that funds are being developed and sought and put together to address other areas. Thank you.
The reading of the Measure DD, when you go online, does not specify that it's targeted specifically for Lake Merritt. It gives the appearance that it mentions Lake Merritt, but it mentions other parks as well. So somebody needs to rewrite the documentation to say exactly what you said, so that when it comes up again for renewal, the voters will know exactly where that money is going. So I'm speaking to what I read. And so you clearly understand, and I'm learning tonight, that it is for Lake Merritt. Thank you, though.
Terry, then James, then Jenny.
Just real quickly, to who will the letter be sent to? I know you said, but I didn't catch that. The CIP
James was mainly aimed at the city administrator's office.
Okay.
City administrator and the public works director.
Okay.
It's addressed to those, and there are copies to other department heads, city's assistant administrators, the head of there's a whole list. It's a draft letter in process now. It's but
Okay.
it's comprehensive, and the people from public works staff who have been associated with the DD Coalition in any way are also directed to receive copies as well.
Okay, thank you for letting me know that. And the only other thing I wanted to say in response to Asada, your comment about the material that is under the bridges there. I'm sorry to be a broken record, but please, any complaints like this should be reported to 311. If there is not an active encampment, well, issues with encampments can be reported to 311 and to homelessness at oaklandca.gov. But if it's not associated anymore with an encampment, and it could be considered illegal dumping or a big pile of debris, then please encourage reporting that to 311, because that is how we can alert KOCB to go and pick that up.
Ms. Terry,
Yeah,
you were in the process of, when I say you, Public Works was cleaning up that area.
uh-huh.
You had that as a project, but you
Yeah.
left that debris there and you didn't complete it. So why should I have to report it?
I see. Okay.
You understand what I'm saying?
I will, so we will report it.
Yes,
Yeah.
ma'am.
We
Okay.
will report it. Thank you so much for bringing it to our attention.
You're welcome.
Okay.
James?
I wanted to provide briefly a little bit of information to Mrs. Olabala. The Measure DD bond, the bond measure was approved by the voters in 2002. In the Measure DD bond measure, there are 56 listed projects that are to be completed under that bond measure. And we're probably near the very end of the completion of all the projects under Measure DD. The only projects that money can be expended under Measure DD are those that are delineated by the bond measure. The largest project in the Measure DD group of projects is the work that was done at the south end of Lake Merritt. And I don't know if you were in the city at the time, but that whole conjunction of roads that used to converge there, there was no way to get across the street from the lake to the auditorium. And so all of that reconstruction that formed Lake Merritt Boulevard is completely all new. That had never been there before. There were freeways, overpasses and underpasses and tunnels and a whole mess. So the largest project in the DD bond package is projects around Lake Merritt. And so what is being done is to carry out those projects that were listed. And before the bond measure was put together, there was an attempt to try and locate all of the areas around the city that should be included in under the bond package, starting with Studio 1 in District 1, all the way out to the swim center in District 7. So those projects were initiated, and so there can't be a reassembly of them now because they're practically all now been completed. And that was the purpose of the bond. There was nothing in the bond measure that said there was an attempt to provide geographic equity throughout the city, but to address projects around parks and open space and waterways that were very badly in need of improvement. Thank you. I hope that helps to clarify a little bit about how Measure DD is constructed.
Jenny?
Thank you, James, for mentioning that, and I would just build on that a little bit. So the use of DD funds was, just to put a fine point on it, was specifically part of what we voters voted for. And the only way that that money could be used any other way would be for the voters to vote on it. I mean, it is voter restricted. That having been said, James is absolutely right that the lion's share of the money is around the lake and also to some extent the channel. What touches on other parts of the city principally are the Bay Trail, which touches on most, not all, but most of the council districts, as well as certain improvements on creeks, Cortland Creek for one, Lions Crossing for another, two that come to mind. The earliest project was Union Point Park, District 5, as well as Studio 1 in District 1. But principally, these have been in District 2 and District 3 council districts, these improvements around the lake. And that was by the design of the bond measure 20 years ago. You took my breath away when you said, Asada, the renewal of this bond. I don't think any of us are expecting that, but hope springs eternal, I guess.
All right, David, I think will be our last comments.
Thank you. Just quickly then. Oh, just quickly listening to Mr. Sada and Jenny speak. In terms of renewal of the bond, well, highly unlikely, not expected, but there will be forthcoming bonds. And the question of equity, I show up now, this bond was written 20 years ago, well, prior to that, and then voted upon and passed. I don't know, I wasn't there, that at the time it was written, if it could have been designed in a way, the way we think about things today when we think of equity throughout the city. So I think the questions that Ms. Asada raises become relevant, and probably some of us will be involved in future bond development projects. And so I think the point is well taken, and thought needs to be given to that as we go forward.
Let me say, I just read a report that it costs the city $25,000 a week for the maintenance and cleanup of Lake Merritt. It's $100,000 a month. So that's why I was saying renewal, because I don't know where the money is going to come from. I just went to a budget committee meeting where we have more expenditures, but not the revenue to cover it. And we're going to have to start making major cuts in the future.
Miss, all maintenance stuff is going to be, I believe all maintenance stuff is going to be separate from any Measure DD stuff, which is.
I was just trying to explain why I thought some kind of renewal is going to take, because we spend a lot of money around Lake Merritt, $100,000 a month for one pool.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
All right, well, thank you, everybody. And I appreciate all of your time, and thank you especially to the city staff and Mandolin for running this meeting, Terry and Mike for all his work putting stuff together. We will see you in September, and please send us agenda items when the time comes, or earlier if you'd like to. I hope you all have a great evening.
Thank you, Adrian.
Thank
Thanks,
you,
everyone.
Adrian.
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, Adrian.